Good evening, everybody. Welcome. I can see people coming in, logging in, and joining us. My name is Carla Whitaker. I'm here representing CalSOAP. CalSOAP, that stands for the California Student Opportunity and Access Program. Our local consortia of CalSOAP represents San Diego County and Imperial County as well to the east of us. So everything that we do is free. And everything that we do is focused on helping students understand the process to go into college, getting training after high school, understanding career paths. And a big, big part of that, of course, is financial aid. So what we are here to talk about tonight, if you're here live, then it's Wednesday, February the 5th of 2025. And if you're watching this later on in recorded form, this was filmed in February 2025. And what we're going to talk about is now that people are starting to hear back from colleges, whether or not they are accepted, they're also starting to get what we call CFPs or college financing plans, financial aid letters from the various colleges that they've applied to. And this is a really important tool. There are many different factors that are going to go into making somebody decide, where am I going to go after high school, right? And if college is in that plan, one of the parts of that decision, besides the culture of the school, the fit with the student, where it is, and what kind of programs and majors they offer, is the financial part. Because the reality is sometimes we have a dream school, and even if we get into it, we can't always necessarily afford it. Or it depends, like we have to figure out how do we make it affordable. And if you're getting accepted to more than one college and you're getting different financing plans coming at you, it can be kind of a stressful and a difficult time. So I'm here to try to give you some advice and some resources on what does a financial aid award look like, and how do you compare offers from different schools and things of that nature. So I do want to share one thing. I follow kind of, I guess you'd call him an influencer or a college coach named Harlan Cohen. And he has a really important message that I think is really good for 12th graders and their families to hear around this time. It just takes about a minute, but I'm just going to share this from his Instagram post to just remind us of a couple of things that are important to keep in mind right now. And then I'm going to share my slide deck and we'll get into that. Also, you'll notice you won't be able to paste directly into the chat, although I'm able to do that. So if I'm referencing a link, I might post a link in the chat. But if you have a question, please put it in the Q&A. I might not be able to get to it until closer to the end. I'm not able to see the Q&A at the same time I'm sharing my screen, but I will try to stop definitely with time toward the end. And if there's anything in the Q&A that I haven't answered, I'll try to answer it at that time. Okay, give me one moment and I can share this very brief video from Harlan Cohen. Here we go.
To be in your corner, Harlan. Dear high school senior, in the coming days, weeks, and months, some of you are going to get accepted to college, and it will feel very good. The overwhelming majority of you are going to get rejected from one or more colleges. It might feel very bad. When you get rejected, many of you are going to feel like you are not as talented, not good enough, or that you wasted your time working so hard to try and get in. But none of this is true. You can be the best, the brightest, the most qualified, and most deserving, and you will not always get what you want. All this means is that you get to live your dreams somewhere else, and you will. See, wherever you go, you're going to be exceptional. Wherever you land, you will live an extraordinary life. A school does not determine your future, you do. One day, you will look back at this moment and see it as a gift. This is the moment you took control of your life and stopped depending on others to make your dreams come true. You are the creator of your dreams. You have always been the creator of your dreams. You will always be the creator of your dreams. Always remember this. Grateful to be in your corner, Harlan.
Okay, that's just a sentiment that I want to make sure people keep in mind. And now we'll be getting into the content. In terms of, are you going to have access to this recording? You'll notice that this is being recorded. Yes, we're going to post it starting tomorrow on our website, CalSoap San Diego. We have a webinar and blog section on there. So this recording will be up there. It's open to the public. It should stay up there indefinitely. We don't plan to take it down after a certain amount of time. It's accessible to anybody. Also, the slide deck that I'm going to be using will also be posted there in that same post. So there'll be a link to this recording and also a link to the slide deck. And I have to thank our friends at UC San Diego Financial Aid. They are the ones who created this slideshow. So it will use UCSD a lot as an example of a college that you might get a financing plan from. However, it's not the only one I'm going to cover. I'm going to talk about what if you applied to a private school, a community college, an out-of-state school, different kind of scenarios like that, and how you can compare costs for all of those. All right, so give me one moment and I will share this slide deck. But again, it will be available starting tomorrow at our website, calsoapsandiego.org, this recording and the slide deck. Bear with me one moment while I bring it up. Okay, so what we're going to be talking about is understanding your college financial aid offer. All right. First, we'll give a little bit of an introduction to what does financial aid mean? What does that term mean and what does it include? What are some of the different costs of college? Also, what does your financial aid offer look like? And then what are the different types of financial aid and how do you compare and contrast? So students who apply for financial aid gain access and they gain choices. So the access that they're gaining is hopefully access to funds that might help the family pay for whether it's a 4-year public college, whether it's a 4-year private college, whether it's a specialty university, maybe a community college, maybe a private career-based or technical-based vocational school. We consider all of those college, okay? All of that is training and education that you're doing after high school in order to get prepared for eventually for a career. When you have more of a choice, sometimes that means instead of looking at just what is the least expensive as far as we'll call it the sticker price, like the overall actual price, instead of looking at that, you're going to be looking at that, yes, but also how much financial aid could we get? Like, are there any grants that we're going to be getting? Is there work study that the student could receive? Are there loans? And if there are loans we qualify for, do we want to take them? And so for some people, if they never filled out a FAFSA or a DREAM Act, if they never applied, if they never filled out any form of financial aid, they never applied for a scholarship, and they just plan to pay it all out of pocket, they might not have access to as many resources as another student who fills out the financial aid applications. We're hoping that you'll be able to choose where you want to go based on what is the best academic fit for you, the best cultural fit for you, the best social fit for you. But we know that price is a big part of it, and college is expensive and it's not getting any cheaper, and it's grown exponentially more so over the years. So let's talk about paying for it. If you are a 12th grader right now, or parents, if you have a 12th grader right now, this is the way you want to apply for any, if you want to call it government financial aid. You'd be completing the 25-26 FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. Some students get confused because they can go online right now and they could fill out the 24-25 FAFSA. And to some of them, that makes logical sense because right now it's the 24-25 school year. So they're like, well, yes, of course I would complete the 24-25 FAFSA. However, it's a little misleading. You're filling out the FAFSA not for this current school year, but for the first year you're going to officially be a college freshman. So that's why it's the 25-26 FAFSA, because that's going to be most likely your official freshman year of college, even if you've already taken college classes in high school for dual credit or something like that. So most people, if the student has a social security number, like if they are a US citizen or if they're a permanent resident, they fill out the FAFSA at fafsa.ed.gov or fafsa.gov, regardless of the status of the parents. But I will add a little caveat there. If the student is undocumented, but they have what we call Assembly Bill 540 status, meaning they have either lived in or gone to high school in the United States for at least 3 years, then they would fill out instead what's called the DREAM Act. And the reason is because they can't fill out the FAFSA. The FAFSA requires you to enter a social security number. And the DREAM Act, if you don't have a social security number, you will not qualify for any federal aid from the federal government. However, in the state of California, you might qualify for state aid, things like California grants or California work study that have to be used in the state of California. As far as when this is due, when this form is due, it will remain open actually all the way until September. However, we're going to strongly recommend that you complete it by what we call the California priority deadline, which is coming up in less than a month from today. It's March 3rd. So that just makes sure that you are filling it out. You have the most access to the first information, the first aid that comes through. I will say there have been a lot of changes right now. There is a different presidential administration than we had previously. And so there are some federal entities that a lot of the protocols and the procedures are changing. So previously, when you filled out the FAFSA, your information was shared or housed with the Department of Education. And the Department of Education could share that information, for example, with colleges, but they didn't share it with other branches of the federal government. For example, they didn't share it with immigration services. We don't know what is going to happen with the Department of Education as we're moving into 2025. We can't guarantee that that federal information will remain protected and private. While we can guarantee that any California information will remain in the state of California and not be shared with the federal government, we can't guarantee the same thing for anything in the FAFSA. Because of that, there are some families that we'll call them mixed status families. They're families where a lot of time the students are citizens, the students were born here, the students have a social security number, but perhaps one of their parents does not. If you're in that situation and your family is fearful about filling out the FAFSA, we want to let you know that you can fill out the DREAM Act instead, or you can do what we call the CADA now, the FAFSA later. So possibly filling out the DREAM Act right now, knowing that depending how you feel later, if you want to also see what can I get in terms of federal aid, you could fill out the FAFSA later. Normally you have to choose and fill out only one or the other, but there are some families that will, again, we call them mixed status families, where some members of the family are documented and some are not, and they might choose to fill out a DREAM Act for security reasons. And we don't have any recommendation one or the other. We do have resources to give you. We have a new section of our website that gives you a lot of access to different resources so that you can get informed and make whatever is the best choice for your family. Okay, so what is kind of the timeline of this process? If you are 12th graders here on the call, or if you are the family or parents of 12th graders, the big thing that's coming up is that March 3rd deadline. So that is a priority deadline for the state of California for either the FAFSA or the DREAM Act, whichever one you're going to fill out. Okay, again, that form doesn't close after March 3rd. It actually stays open through, I believe, September 3rd. And technically even after that. But as far as a priority deadline, we really encourage March 3rd is when you should try to have that finished by. If you're having trouble filling out the FAFSA, CalSOAP is here to help you individually. For example, this Saturday, February 8th, we are having Cash for College workshops around the county. I believe we have 4 to 5 different physical host locations, everywhere from North County to South County to San Diego Central to East County, that you can go and get one-on-one help with a FAFSA or a DREAM Act. Also, if you are not available to physically go, we are having that virtually. I'm actually hosting the virtual Cash for College, and it's this Saturday morning. You can log in anytime between, I think, 9 and 11 and get help with your FAFSA or with your DREAM Act from one of our student staff who, or college staff who's trained to help with that. So if you need help filling out the form and you're running into issues, snags, you don't understand it, you can't fill it out on your own, you just have questions, or you want to share your screen and have someone walk through with you, CalSOAP is here to do that. And like I said, our services are free. So this is something that you and any high school senior can access for free. It doesn't matter where you go to school, as long as you live somewhere in San Diego or Imperial County. All right. Now, hopefully you've already applied for colleges. For many universities, the applications were due November 30th or maybe December or January. If you are applying still to a community college, the applications are open now, and they're usually open for the rest of spring for if you're going to start this coming fall. Okay, so now is about the time in February and March when students start receiving, either they start getting acceptances and admissions offers from different universities and getting told you are in. They might get told, unfortunately, you've been waitlisted, or they might be told, unfortunately, we're not able to accommodate you, that we have, say like for every 10 spots, maybe they can only accept 4 people or something along those lines. So depending, do they have like an 80% admit rate, a 50%? Some very selective colleges might be as low as like a 4 or 5% admit rate. But this is the time. February and March is usually when you start hearing where you are getting accepted. And what comes after the acceptance is usually also a notification from that college's financial aid office, where they put together what they abbreviate as a CFP, or a college financing plan. So this is showing you, it's packaging together based on either the FAFSA or the DREAM Act and any other information that you've shared with the financial aid office. It puts together the cost and then what can be covered from what sources. So we want to talk about the cost of attendance at each different type of school and college. I'm going to start with the tuition cost because that's the one that is the most variable from school to school. To be honest, the cost of like a dorm or a food plan doesn't vary as dramatically as the cost of tuition. So I'm going to show you, we call it the sticker price. It's just the straight up price if you were paying just with Venmo and you had to, literally, or pay in cash. And this is what you would pay for tuition for 1 year of full-time tuition at some various different types of colleges. You'll notice that on the right of the page here, you're showing UCSD has 8 sub-colleges. They have Marshall, Muir, Revelle, Roosevelt, and Warren. And then they have also 6th, 7th, and 8th, which are yet to be named. But they're all part of UCSD and they all have the same majors offered and they all cost the same tuition. So say you wanted to go to community college for 2 years and then apply to a transfer to a university to finish your junior senior year. If you were going to pay out of pocket and you were taking, let's say, full-time units, like 12 units a semester, approximate cost at a community college would be about $1,300 a year. That's full tuition and fees for 1 entire year of college. So that is, in California, extremely affordable for California residents, and a lot of people just choose to pay out of pocket so that they don't even have to do a financial aid form. However, I strongly encourage that financial aid form. The next 2 public systems in California are university systems. We have the CSU system and we have the UC system. As far as the tuition at a California State University this year, and again, this can go up year to year, but right now I'm going to give an approximation of about $8,000 a year for tuition and fees at a Cal State. So that's about the tuition and fees for 1 year at San Diego State University or Cal State San Marcos or Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. The University of California, there's fewer of them. There's 23 CSUs. There's only 10 UCs, and only 9 of those UCs are open to undergrads, like UC San Diego, UC Santa Barbara, UCLA, UC Berkeley, UC Riverside, UC Irvine, Santa Cruz, Merced. At the UCs right now, the tuition is about $16,000 a year. This seems to me like quite an overwhelming amount. I definitely did not pay that much when I went there many, many decades ago. But cost of living increases and the cost of college increases. And believe it or not, that's very affordable for a very quality education because it is a public university. Now, what about private colleges? What if you're interested in MIT, USC, Harvard, Stanford, Yale, maybe an Ivy League or a private or a highly selective college? It really varies from college to college, but many of these, just for the tuition alone, probably is in the range of somewhere between $40,000 and $80,000 a year for the tuition part of that. Okay, So now that we've shocked ourselves with the sticker price, now we're going to talk about the financial aid part of it. Well, actually, first we're going to talk about the other costs besides tuition and fees. So besides tuition and fees, you have many things that you have to pay for just as an adult human. You have to have a place to live. You have to have food to eat. Sometimes we call that room and board, or you might call that, if it's on campus, a dorm and a meal plan. Specific to college students, you also have books and supplies. You're probably going to have to buy books for your classes, and you will need access to certain supplies, whether it's like Wi-Fi, whether it is a printer, whether it is a computer, whether it is Microsoft, whether it's Windows, whatever it is, those kinds of supplies are associated with, you need certain things to go to college and take classes. Also, you have to consider transportation. You might live on campus and not really go off campus a lot, and that's great. But if you have a car, then that means you'd have to buy a parking pass. If you have a car, that means you're maybe paying a car payment. Maybe you're paying car insurance. Maybe you're paying for gas and the maintenance of your car and possible car repairs. If you're taking something like the bus or the trolley, public transportation, luckily college students can get free and highly discounted deals on a lot of those, which is great. But again, you have to take into account the transportation costs and also your personal expenses. Everybody has to have deodorant, and everybody has to have clothing. And there's just certain things. And I know for some students, they're like, I've got to have my Amazon Prime, or I've got to have my Netflix or my Spotify or whatever it is. So, colleges sometimes offer financial aid, not just for the tuition, but sometimes for other things that were mentioned on that page as well, the other parts of college costs. We'll basically break down different types of financial aid into 3 types. There's gift aid, there's work aid, and loan aid. So the 2 things that are gift aid, in other words, they're both free money that do not have to be repaid. So these are great, great forms of financial aid, are grants and scholarships. So a grant is going to be applied toward your tuition and fees first, but sometimes there's many grants that will also go on and apply to other parts of your college cost. It could be a dorm, it could be a food plan. It depends on the type of grant, but grants are great. Grants are money you don't have to repay. It might come in the form of a federal Pell Grant. It might come in the form of a California Cal Grant. It might be the Promise Grant for a community college. It might be the Blue and Gold for UC, or a state university grant for CSU. But grants are great. Always accept a grant if one is offered to you. They are free money that does not have to be paid back. Scholarships are also free money that don't have to be paid back. However, instead of just a single form you fill out once a year like the FAFSA, which is how you find out usually about grants, scholarships, because they might be awarded from individual colleges, individual departments, maybe individual donors or people or organizations. Some of them are one-time only money. Some of them you might be able to renew them annually every year you're in college. But scholarships, they all have different amounts. They all have different requirements. They all have different deadlines. So scholarships do take more work than grants. Grants is like, hey, I filled out the FAFSA or the DREAM Act. I reported my parents' income. I reported my income. We reported our assets. And here's what comes back to us as any grants we might get. Hopefully you do, you might or might not. But scholarships, on the other hand, like I said, they have rolling deadlines throughout the year. Some of them are just for high school seniors. Some of them are renewable, and they have different requirements. Like for some of them, you might have to be, it could be like from a church or a synagogue. It could be a faith-based scholarship. It could be an athletic scholarship. It could be a community service scholarship. There's so many different ones. But the point is, if you get them, that goes into your package at a college, and it's free money you don't have to pay back. So that's covering the gift aid. There's also a form of financial aid called work study. If you qualify for work study, I'll give you like a typical amount. Let's say you get a financial aid award letter and it tells you you qualify for $2,500 worth of work study for this academic year. And you're like, okay, cool. But does that mean they just give me $2,500. No, it means you have to earn that money while you're attending college. There are a lot of on-campus and sometimes even some off-campus jobs that are called work-study jobs. That's their classification. Usually you get a paycheck every 2 weeks. Usually those jobs you work somewhere, it could be as low as like 5 hours a week, but for some students, it might be as much as 10 or 20 or 30 hours a week. It depends if they're going as a part-time or full-time student. You get employment experience, you get to keep that paycheck and use it to pay for whatever you want. And it's a great, experience to network, to gain contacts on campus. I can't tell you how many people have gotten a professional job who started out at a student staff position. And then after they graduated, they had contacts in that college department. And so they went on to get a professional position there. But work study is basically saying the government will pay this part of your salary until this money runs out. And even then, most departments still take over and will continue to pay the rest of your salary. But if you have work study, it makes you very attractive to a college department because let's say they have a budget of $10,000 a year that they can pay their student staff. If that student staff is coming in with $2,000 worth of work study, that department is saving $2,000 that they don't have to take out of their own budget. So even though you don't have to have work study to get a job on campus, there are non-work study jobs. It does make you a very viable candidate and a very competitive candidate for an on-campus job in most colleges. So how do you find out if you have work study? If you filled out the FAFSA or DREAM Act, that's one of the things you'll find out. If you get it, it'll be on your financial aid award. And finally, this is considered a form of financial aid, but it is not gift aid. So financial aid doesn't mean a full ride. Financial aid doesn't always mean free money. It can also mean loans. So if you borrow a student loan while you're in college to help pay your education costs, then you do have to repay that loan. They ask you to start repaying it 6 months after the student is finished with college, whether that's if they graduate and get a bachelor's, or if they're taking a break from school, or they actually defer it again if you apply to graduate school and get into graduate school. It might be a subsidized or an unsubsidized loan. Subsidized is better. The government pays the interest while you're in college. There's also something students, if you aren't taking out the loan, there's a program called the Parent Plus Loan. It stands for Parent Loan of Undergraduate Students. Now, one of the differences is that with the Plus Loan, it's just like a car payment. You start paying it back right away. Like you start making monthly payments while the student's still in college because it's the parent making these payments. Students, if it were you, you wouldn't have to start paying back anything until after you actually graduated from college. But parents, if you're getting a plus loan, this is not in the student's name, it's in your name. So you're actually making monthly payments starting as soon as the student is basically starting to receive disbursements of that money. Okay, so every school is going to have a cost of attendance that you can go to their website, go to that college's website and look for a cost of attendance. And it should be laid out very clearly. It's actually a law. They have to lay it out clearly. Okay. And if you find a college that does not, that is a little bit suspect. You can always email me and ask if I think a college is legitimate or not. We have ways to figure that out. But you want to consider the tuition costs. You also want to consider housing costs if you're going to be living on campus. This is an example for UC San Diego. And notice that it has 3 columns, basically. There's a column of if you're living with your parents, if you're living on campus, like paying for their dorm plan, or if you're living off campus, maybe like in an apartment with friends or something like that. So the direct costs are the things that you're going to be charged. So you'll notice that for a California resident, the tuition and fees at UC San Diego, it's more than $19,000 a year. But that's the same whether you're living with parents on campus or off campus. That's a steady tuition and fees packaged together. And you can see that the tuition part of it is not that high. A lot of it is the individual campus fee, the health fee, the one-time document fee. Then it also has different estimates for living expenses, food and housing for students, if they have their own children who are dependents or not. And you'll see living with parents, they estimate that cost is about $8,000 a year. Whereas if you're on campus or in an apartment off campus, it's a little more than $18,000 a year. They're assuming that your parents are not going to charge you high rent, and they're assuming that your parents are going to help provide a little bit of food as well. Now, there's also something called the indirect costs, and these are just estimates. So they're estimating in 1 year, this is what we think you'll spend on books, course materials, supplies, and equipment. In this case, you'll see it's about $1,200 a year. Miscellaneous personal expenses, maybe about $2,300 a year. Transportation expenses might also be, now for the person living with parents, it's a little higher, like $2,400 a year because they're commuting. Whereas if they live on campus, notice that's a lot lower, under $1,000, because they'll probably have very low transportation expenses. And so then it also is showing you if someone is a non-California resident, if they're not a California resident, they're going to pay a lot more for tuition than you are as a California resident. So notice that the cost living with parents on campus or off campus, that increases greatly. Instead of being, say, for example, $33,000 a year, which is the total cost for, say, a California resident living with their parents, to $68,000 a year. And that's because of that out-of-state tuition at a public university. Again, every college should have this available so you can see this. So how do they determine, or how do you determine your financial need? Like, how much money am I going to get? How much am I going to need, and how much am I going to get? And is that going to be gift aid, loan aid, etc.? So every college has, like we said, a cost of attendance, a COA. It's not just the tuition, it's everything that it costs you to live. Okay. Then you're going to subtract what's called the SAI. When you fill out a FAFSA or a DREAM Act, you'll get something called the Student Aid Index. Used to be called the Expected Family Contribution. It could actually be a negative number, like it could be negative $1,500. It could be $0. It could be $5,000 or $10,000, or it could be all the way up to like $1 million. It's basically the amount of money that they are expecting a family to be able to pay, even if it doesn't sound reasonable. It's a formula where they get this number. Then if you subtract the cost of any other financial assistance, like maybe outside scholarships, what is left over is what you still need to get covered. That's your financial need. So you want to review the financial aid offer from each school, and then you want to compare the costs between different colleges so that you can make an informed decision. Maybe one of them has a higher cost as far as the sticker price, but maybe they're offering such a big financial aid package that you would still be paying less out of pocket to go there. And I know money is not the only part of your decision, but it is part of it. So determine, how much gift aid am I going to receive? Like, what's the total I'll get in scholarships and grants? Also, will I be getting work study? Then determine if you'll need to borrow loans. And by the way, you don't have to get a loan through the FAFSA. You don't have to get a loan through the government. You certainly can, but you can also choose to go through your own credit union, your own bank, or your own financial institution to borrow money for college. It does not have to be a government loan. It's giving you an offer of one, but it doesn't mean you have to accept it. The goal is to make sure you have enough money to cover your college costs for the school year, but then also have to remember about upcoming school years, because it might change. You might get a lot of scholarships when you were a senior in high school as you're becoming a freshman, but then as you're moving into your sophomore year of college, if those were one-time scholarships, you might have to make those up with other sources, whether that's getting a job, whether that is borrowing money, whether that is pursuing more scholarships. Okay. So once you know the total cost of attendance and you've added all your gift aid, you can add in loans also if you choose to borrow them. You're going to subtract those financial aid totals from the cost of attendance, and that'll determine, okay, what is my deficit here? Do I still need more? And that's something you're going to figure out, probably with a calculator. So this is a website that I'm going to highly recommend. Even though each college individually has a calculator like this one is nice because it lets you compare all different colleges, whether they're public or private, in-state or out-state, out of state, whether they're 2-year, 4-year, no matter where the college is, this lets you compare the cost by college. So it's an organization called U Aspire, so the letter U, ASPIRE. And UAspire has a college cost calculator. For just one moment, I'm going to stop sharing so that I can put this in the chat. I believe we have, oh, no, it's the wrong one. Give me a moment and I'm just going to put the link to this in the chat. Okay. I'm actually going to pause right now because I do see some questions in the Q&A. So I'm going to go back to the slide deck, but while I'm here, let me answer a couple of Q&A questions. How would financial aid be delivered? I hear some of them directly pay your tuition, but I plan to do work study at the same time. How would that work? Okay, great question. So usually the financial aid package is kind of funneled. Everything is funneled. All the funds are funneled through your financial aid office. So it goes from the financial aid office to your expenses, like to your quarterly or semester tuition. If you have work study, you don't automatically get it up front. What happens is if you get a job, whatever that job is paying, let's say that it's paying $18 an hour. Okay. As you earn a paycheck, you're just getting to keep that paycheck. And so as you're working, whether it's like September, October, November, all during the year, sometimes these are summer jobs too, you're basically getting that money just as you would from any job in the form of a paycheck. Okay, so the work study part of it doesn't come to you all in a big lump sum together up front. It comes as you earn it, hour by hour, week by week, in the form of a paycheck. The other financial aid will come through the financial aid office, and first they distribute it to any costs you have, direct costs. But then if there's left over, they literally basically you give them, for example, a checking account or a savings account that's yours, and they will pay it directly into that account. And now you have to save that money and budget it and say, okay, well, this is what I have till the end of the school year. I need to use this for rent every month, or I need to use this for my car payment, or I need to use this for books or whatever you need. So that's how the financial aid is delivered, usually through the financial aid office. But if it's work study, you get it through the form of a paycheck. Are you able to accumulate financial aid? If you do not need it until you transfer after a community college, would you be able to accumulate and use those funds? That is a great question too. Okay, so it's going to depend which funds you're talking about. So in the state of California, for example, the Cal Grant is going to be a different amount if you're attending a community college versus a four-year university. They know the cost of attendance varies. So yes, in a way it can accumulate, it depending on how you're spending it. So for example, say you're going to a community college, say that you have the entire tuition covered by the promise, and say that on top of that, because of your SAI and your family situation, your family income, you also qualified for more than that. And the financial aid office is literally just depositing that into your account every semester. It's then up to you. It's now your money. Okay, so at that time, now you have to decide, is this going to have to last me through my junior year of college, my senior year of college? Am I going to have to, am I able to rent a place off campus? Do I have to continue living with parents? So yes, you can accumulate it in the sense of if all of your school expenses are paid and you have left over, they give it back to you, but then it becomes yours and it's up to you to save it. So you can't save a grant, for example, but you can save money that might be, that's not restricted as like tuition only money. Okay, so if it is for any expense that you want, then you can save that money. If it's a grant, it usually first has to go to a direct college cost or a direct college expense. Okay, all right, let me go back to sharing screen. Give me one moment. Oops. Okay, so the UAspire College Cost Calculator is one that I highly recommend to be able to compare costs. This is an example of what a financial aid award might look like. I call it a letter, but they often don't come as a paper letter in the mail anymore. It will come electronically through your student portal at that university. So say for this particular university, it's telling you, okay, the financial aid that you're being offered here, the total we can offer you is about $40,000. And here's the breakdown. They have a fall and spring semester, and then they show the total in the far right. They're showing all your grants and scholarships. The student is getting a faculty scholarship, a federal Pell Grant, a federal supplemental education opportunity grant. And then also, if they want it, they're also being offered loans, a direct subsidized loan, which is great, and a direct unsubsidized loan, which is not as good, but still it's good that you have access if you want to borrow. So they're saying this is not all gift aid. Part of it is borrowing aid, but this is what we can give you. Now, the cost of attendance for 1 year at this particular college is more like $61,000. So you can see the tuition amount per semester, the fees, the room, the housing, the meal plan. And then what they estimate, they won't bill you for these, but this is what they estimate you'll have to also have available for books and transportation and other things. So here's the total estimated balance is $21,000. In other words, they're saying, look, the total amount we think you'll need for 1 year of school is $61,000. What we can offer in scholarships and loans is about $40,000. So that still leaves you about $21,000 short that you are going to have to somehow pay on your own. Now, whether you want to ask them, can I increase that loan? Or if you need to get your own outside loan, or if you need to say, sorry, this is not a college I can attend. But notice it gives you payment options. So if you were to pay the whole year, it shows how it would split up into 12 payments per year or 10 payments per year, depending how you wanted to do it, like if you wanted to include the summer or not. So they don't charge you everything for like a whole quarter or semester up front. They usually do give you the option, just like you have a car payment or a mortgage payment that's a monthly basis. There would also be like a monthly bill from a college, and they would, you know, allow you to opt for a monthly payment if you were doing that. So that's an example of what an award letter looks like. Now I'm going to show you how to compare from college to college. And this is a sheet that I'll have available when I post this on the website tomorrow. You could actually create one of these. It can be digital. It can be old-fashioned paper and pencil. But let's say you have 5 colleges that you're looking at. You can actually fill in or write down, okay, what are their tuition and fees for, say, a year? What would food and rent cost for a year there? What are books and supplies? What do they estimate? How much would I spend on travel and personal expenses? And you could come up for a total cost of attendance at each of those different schools. Now you have to add in, okay, well, what are they giving me? When they give me that financial plan, that college financing plan and that financial aid award letter, are there any grants in it? Are there any scholarships in it that they're giving me, the institution, the college is giving me? And also, is there any other gift aid I'm bringing on my own? Like maybe you've earned a scholarship in high school and you're bringing that in. And even if it's paid to the financial aid office, it will go back to you, the student, either towards your tuition or towards some other direct cost possibly. Then is that, you know, are you being offered any federal loans, any Perkins loans, or do you have any other loans that you're going to pursue on your own, like through your own bank or credit union? Then also, are they offering you any work study, and are you planning to get a part-time job while you're in college? So then you have to subtract. You take that total cost of attendance, you subtract any financial aid that you'd be getting, and what's uncovered, that is the amount that you have to say, look, here's the tough decision. Can we afford this? Do we want to borrow more money? Do we want to work an incredibly hard 3 jobs during the summer? Do we want to work 20 hours a week when we're still full-time in school? Like those are decisions that you have to begin to make. So these are some things that you probably want to start if you haven't already started planning or discussing as a family. They're important family conversations that you want to have. One really good conversation to have is, will you borrow? Some people are absolutely dead set against borrowing. They do not want the burden of a loan. They don't want those loans ballooning and the interest accruing, and it to be something that is such a big debt that when they graduate, no matter what job they get, it would take them decades and decades to pay back that loan. Some people are okay with a certain amount of loans. It's kind of one of those conversations where you say, okay, yes, I'm comfortable with borrowing, but I have a limit. Like we can't borrow more than $5,000 a year or whatever it is, the amount that you think that's the maximum for your family. So that's a discussion you need to have. Are loans going to be an option for you? Yes or no? And if the answer is no, then you have to, choose a college based on the affordability of their tuition, and also go for as many scholarships as you can and hope that you get as much grant and any other need-based aid as possible. Also, are you going to work during school? Some people don't have a job during college because they are a full-time student, and being a full-time student means full-time. You're expected to spend 40 hours a week on your studies. And so for a lot of people, they're able to really easily balance a part-time job, say 10 hours a week or 15 hours a week while they're going to full-time school. But as you start to increase your work hours, it becomes harder and harder to also do your studies. So consider that. Will you live on campus? Will you live with parents? Will you live off campus with friends? That's going to affect your expenses and how much you spend. If you live on campus, you might be required to get a meal plan. If you live with your parents or on your own, you might be able to be creative with your food budget and really spend very little to make that food last a long time. So do your research, use your financial aid offers to help you plan. Okay, here are the different here's the different offers. What is the best deal? Is that where I really want to go? That's all things that you have to start making that decision. So I'm showing this again because UC San Diego Financial Aid created this slide deck. We have their social media. They are on Twitter, they're on Instagram, they're at UCSD Fine Aid for financial aid. But also, we at CalSoap San Diego also have a social media presence, and every college's financial aid office has a social media presence, a website, usually phone option, and usually they have Zoom hours too, where like every, Monday through Friday, you can call between, or you can Zoom in between like 1 and 3 and talk to a financial aid officer. They like, if you're interested in a college and you know that you don't have all the money out of pocket to afford it yourself, I would, like, if you want to go to City College, start following San Diego City Financial Aid. If you want to go to San Diego State, start following SDSU Financial Aid. If you want to go to UCSD, start following at UCSD Financial Aid, because that's where you're going to find a lot of reminders, announcements, and quick information that's not like you have to, read hours and hours of things, but it's really helpful messaging. So every college has a financial aid office, and they usually, like I said, will have a social media presence, a website, a phone number, a Zoom hours, and things like that. All right. So their scholarship is FAS, for Federal Financial Aid for Students.ucsd.edu. And CalSoap, we also have a website, calsoapsandiego.org. And again, that's where tomorrow I'm going to be posting this blog and the slide deck as well. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing there. I see that right now, there are only the 2 questions that were asked, and I kind of paused to answer them already. If anyone has further questions, you are welcome to put them in the Q&A now. Okay. All right, seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and conclude our time for this evening. Welcome to everybody. Maybe we'll see some of your seniors February 8th or March 1st at one of our Cash for College events or online. Thank you so much. I appreciate you coming. When should you start the process? As far as when you should start the financial aid process, if you have a younger student, you should start researching now, but you can't actually fill out a FAFSA or a DREAM Act and most scholarship applications until they're a senior. If they're now a 12th grader, then now is the time. If the student is an 11th grader, now is when you should go to the go to studentaid.gov and use their estimator. They have an estimator that tells you what they think your SAI will be based on today. So you can estimate what your student aid index will probably be next year. So start researching, start looking up scholarships, start planning, but you can't actually fill out any forms usually until you're in 12th grade. All right. Let's see, I have one more. Oh, who are the target groups for the FAST and DREAM? I'm not sure about FAST. So the DREAM Act, if you're talking about that the California DREAM Act is for students who are either California residents who are either undocumented, they don't have a social security number, or they might be documented, but like a parent might not. That is the California DREAM application. FAST, I'm not sure. I'm not familiar with that reference. Sorry. Oh, spelling error. Okay. All right. You all, I believe, have my email because you've gotten email reminders from me via Zoom. So if you have questions after this, I'm going to go ahead and conclude now, but please just shoot me an email. And if I don't know, if I can answer, I'll answer as soon as possible. If I don't know the answer, I'll check with a colleague and get back to you. So if you have other questions, please let me know. If you need help interpreting your Students Financial Aid Award letter, let me know. I will do my best. And again, CalSOAP is here. We are free. We're going to try to help you as much as we can. Thank you, everybody, for your time tonight, and enjoy the rest of your evening.